Hi, you are watching Economy by Bhushan Jalali, a subset of Nancy Foundation. Today I have chosen the topic investment. So, what is investment? Investment is the amount of money which one puts it with the intention of getting returns or rewards. That may be in the shape of interest, or we can say getting the profits. So, investment is for the purpose of getting profit. But that is in the case of individuals or private. In the case of government, the investment is for the purpose of extending certain facilities to the citizens. So, this is investment. Now, there are different models of investment. One is called public investment model. The public investment model means where the government is investing the money in certain assets and the source of the money is from taxes. This type of investment is called public investment model. The second is private investment model. In private investment model, it is the individuals or the corporates or the foreign investment institutions who invest in the assets. They are called, that policy is called private investment policy. For example, we have foreign direct investment. Some foreign investors, they also want to invest in India, or India desires that foreigners should invest in India. That investment is called foreign direct investment. There is other type of investing in India, that is called FPI, that is foreign portfolio investment. When the foreign investor invests in stocks exchanges up to a certain limit, normally less than 10%, that is called foreign portfolio investment. That is normally in equities or debentures. If it exceeds 10% of the share capital of the company, then that is not called FPI, that is called FDI. So till now we have studied that we have public investment model, and the second is private investment model. The third model of investment is public private investment model, where the resources, the means of public investment and the private investment are combined. That model, that type of investment is called public private investment model. Normally, what happens, the government cannot invest in extensively for all the required assets, because in India almost 50% of the investment in, especially in infrastructure, it is done by the government. But at the same time, government doesn't have the sufficient revenues. So other important aspects of defense, research, social sector, education, employment, health, they lose their sight from government. So with the result, it is the world over phenomena that governments want that private sector should come forward for investment, especially in infrastructure or other things. Number one. Second reason is, it is empirical evidence says that in private sector there is efficiency of management, there is better technology, so the output from the private sector is better as compared to public sector. So the other model of investment is that is called public private partnership model. So it has different variants. One is called BOT, build, operate, transfer. What does they do? Government enters into an agreement with the corporate, asks him to build the asset, normally say airport or seaport or some railways or some highways. Build it, operate it, and transfer it. What does the corporate do? It uses his own resources, it acquires the land, it constructs the project, it operates it, it realizes the revenue, normally, for example, in the case of highways, from toll. Once he recovers his money along with the profit, then the asset is transferred back to the government, public. That is called BOT. It has some other variants also, that is called BOOT, 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 build, own, operate, and transfer. The asset is owned by the corporate. Then it operates. Then it is, after realizing its money, then it transfers the asset in the name of government. Same way we have build, own, operate, build, lease, transfer, design, build, finance and operate, design, build, operate and transfer. And in the process, latest we have engineering, procurement, construction model, EPC model. In this way, asset is designed, financed and constructed by the private entity. The public agency that built the asset eventually receives ownership of it. The public entity pays the private entity a lump sum amount in exchange. And we can say the government pays a lump sum amount to the corporate, and then it transfers back to the government once he realizes the money. But it has been observed that this system too had some issues with regard to stalling of the project, viability of the project, non-compliance of the timeline. So with the result, the private investors avoided to take part in the PPP model. So government introduced a new model that is called hybrid annuity model. What is this? The new hybrid model is a mix of the EPC, engineering, procurement and construction, and BOT. In the annuity mode, the corporates gets a fixed and, more importantly, assured payment from the government. So in a way, in this process, government undertakes all the requirements: purchase of land, clearance from the environment department, clearance from the forest department, even the collection of revenue from the tolls, because sometimes the corporates had that issue of some political change in government or some political unrest or some litigation, so they were secured about whether the revenue will be realized subsequently or not. To get rid of that risk, in the case of hybrid annuity model, government takes the responsibility. It shares the risk of collecting the revenue from by means of a toll. So this system, hybrid annuity model system, has been adopted by National Highway Authority of India and is showing good results, where the response is coming good from the investors. This is how what models are used in India. So we can say for infrastructure we have public-private partnership model. Private sector model is used for real estate and equities, and we have public sector model that is used for defense and social sector. These are primarily the models which are being used in India. Besides that, during the course of 5-year plans, India used to have Harrod-Domar model, which laid emphasis on savings and technology. As per that model, it is the savings and technology which results in generating of growth in the GDP. Then we had Solow-Swan model, which virtually endorsed the Harrod-Domar model with the addition of productivity. Then we had Fieldman-Mahalanobis model. As per this model, it laid emphasis on consumer goods industry. As the earlier Harrod-Domar model was focusing on the capital goods industry, this made emphasis on consumer goods industry, saying that if we focus on these, it will result in the growth in the industrialization in India. Now lastly, we had Rao-Manmohan model, which is normally called LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization. In addition to these four main, there are other levies model for economic development by unlimited labor. As per that model, they said that we should give better salaries to the manufacturing sector employees, so that surplus in the agriculture sector will automatically move towards manufacturing. But this has not yielded good results. Then we have an induced investment model. In this model, we say that if there is an increase in the national income, GDP, it compels the investors to invest more. That is called induced investment model. Leverage investment model. Leverage investment model means that suppose you invest by borrowing. You borrow, then invest it with the intent of earning more than what you pay to the interest on the loans. That is called leveraging investment model. This now I will come to another topic, that is called infrastructure investment model. This is very important because infrastructure is one of the enabling factors of economic growth of a country. If there is a growth in agriculture, it results directly in the generation of employment as well as the growth in GDP. When there is a growth in GDP or growth in employment, it directly results in the more demand in the infrastructure. So, infrastructure finance, but we had some issues in infrastructure. What are the issues? Fiscal burden. Almost half of the total investment in infrastructure is done by the government. So the government has other competing demands from other sectors, say education, health, research, employment generation. So we can say the government has a fiscal burden, and is compelled to go for fiscal deficit. So this is a challenge for the issue of infrastructure financing. Second is asset liability mismatch. The infrastructure financing is always for a longer period. Its gestation period is long because the projects are for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even 20, 25 years. And in India, the financing is generally done by banks. So banks extend loans from the resources of depositors' money. So depositors keep money maximum for a period of 10 years, 5 years, 7 years. And when the banks extend loans for a longer period, say 15 years, 20 years, sometimes there is a demand from the depositors to withdraw money. The bank cannot say no. But the bank has already extended for a longer period, 30 years, 25 years, 15 years. So we can say there is an asset liability mismatch. So this is the problem with the Indian financial system, because the long-term financing could have been managed through bond market. And in India, we don't have developed private bond market. We have a government debt market, bond market, and the private bond market is not developed. With the result, corporates are left with only alternative to borrow from the banks. So the banks have the issue of asset liability management mismatch. Now there was a institutions who could have lent money for longer term, that was insurance companies or mutual funds, for pension funds. But these insurance companies and pension funds are under obligation to invest in government securities. With the result, they have again little funds available for extending loans for these infrastructure financing. So this is the issue in our infrastructure financing. Our municipal bond market is not so developed. We have insufficient user charges. Suppose there are certain facilities provided by the government, by the municipalities. For example, irrigation facilities, sewerage, or some other municipal facilities. They charge very less from the consumers, from the users. With the result, they are left with little resources for further development. And at the same time, municipal bond market is not so developed in India. So that is one more challenge for the infrastructure financing. Now comes what are the steps taken by government. The first step taken by the government is to meet the finances of infrastructure is public-private partnership projects in infrastructure. What is the advantage? To utilize the efficiency, technology, better management of private sector with the advantages that are available in the public sector. Put together jointly, they are called public-private partnership. Now there are some issues. In some projects of public-private participation, we don't get it is very difficult to get the private partnerships because viability gaps. They say in a particular project, say outside the city limits, commercially it is not viable. It may be good for the government because government is supposed to provide the social services, social sector services. But the private sector, their main focus is profit. So they say it is not viable. To check that, government has come out with the viability gap funding. it provides central government grants to up to 20%. Central government provides grants up to 20% project. In certain cases, it is 60%, 30 by center and 30 by state. In certain cases, 20 by center and 20 by, that means 40%, 60%, and 80% grants are provided by the government. 80% in the case of pilot projects. 60% project costs in certain sectors: water supply, water treatment, solid waste management, health, education. So government has come with these schemes to encourage the private sector to invest in these infrastructure projects. One more step government has done, that is foreign direct investment. It has allowed 100% foreign direct investment in automatic route. Automatic route means that the foreigners can invest in India without government's permission. They have to simply inform the RBI. That is in the case of mining, power, civil aviation, construction, development projects, industrial parks, petroleum, natural gas sector, telecommunications, and special economic zones. This has the steps taken by the government. Further, as I said, that there is a problem of financing, as banks have a asset liability mismatch. So government has created India Infrastructure Finance Company. It lends directly to the corporates for a longer term, and for banks it arranges refinancing. Infrastructure bonds are issued. Liberalization in external commercial borrowings. The minimum amount has been reduced from 5 years to, minimum time period has been reduced from 5 years to 3 years for external commercial borrowings. Last but not the least, establishing a National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. It is the first sovereign fund exclusively made for the purpose of infrastructure financing. For the purpose of public-private partnership, there is a resource sharing of resources between public and private. Risks is also originally risks were all transferred to the private sector. Now government also shares the risk, responsibilities, and rewards profits also. This has started yielding results. But still, public-private participation has certain limits. What? That is cost. Sometimes cost is more. Complexity. There is a complexity in implementation of execution of these units. Political exposures. We cannot crony capitalism cannot be rolled out. In the case of public-private participation, we have the main system is that variants. We have BOT model, build, operate, transfer type of concession. It has other variants also: build, transfer, build, rehabilitate, operate, transfer, build, lease, transfer, build, own, and operate. Ownership of the project remains usually with the project company. So, for example, a mobile phone network. Therefore, the private company gets the benefits of the any residual value of the project. EPC sector: engineering, procurement, and construction. Highway sector in India is responsible for the job creation of millions of people. Has a multiplier effect on the economy. Hence, government took immediate measures to boost the sector by adopting EPC model. Again, it had some issues. Then it was hybrid annuity model which was introduced, which is a combination of EPC and BOT. And this is all I have to share you about the investment in India. Friends, if you have liked it, please like it, share it, and for any suggestions, you can mail at bhushanlal jalali at gmail.com. Thank you.